All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. I hope you all had a great weekend. So today we are going to be doing just a very light kind of comparison from the RNC and the DNC now that they have both concluded. Last week I did a video reacting to some specific types of videos and whatnot coming out of the DNC, so make sure you check that out. But I realized I didn't do anything of that sort for the RNC, mostly because I wasn't doing that type of video quite yet. So I figured I would just throw them both into one video, do a brief overview, and discuss just general things about the two conventions. So that is what we are going to be doing today. But before all of that, this is your reminder to subscribe to this channel, like this video. If you are listening on Spotify, make sure you leave a rating and a review over there. All of my other social medias are linked down below, as always. And with all of that, I'm Noelle. This is Just Say No. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first, I have a cute pumpkin sweater on, and you can't even see it, and that was very upsetting for me. So I just figured I'd take a moment and show you, because it's so cute, and I love it so much. So I felt like the best way to do this, since these were both 3 or 4 day long conventions, was to break it up into very general categories. Now again, we're not going to be diving in super deeply, like we're not going to be reviewing speeches or anything like that. We're just going to be talking about the overall vibe of each of the conventions, and in fact that is going to be one of our categories, is the vibe. Another category we are going to have is going to be the overall message of each convention, what they're trying to get across to their constituents, and then finally roll call, who was in attendance. But we're going to get started with the first category, the message. And to figure out what the message of each convention was, what I felt would be the most reasonable thing to do would be for me to listen to the speeches of like the key speakers. And my metric for that was, does the average American know who this person is? If I felt like I could find somebody on the street and ask them if they're aware of this name and they would say yes, then I listened to their speech and I used what they were talking about and kind of took the average of all of those for each convention, and that was what I deemed to be the overall message of that convention. Okay, so for the RNC, we are going to have Trump, Vance, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Tucker Carlson, Vivek, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then for the DNC, we have Kamala Harris, Walz, AOC, Barack and Michelle Obama, and Bill and Hillary Clinton. So listening to the RNC speakers, there was a lot of talk about hope and unity for the future and for America, and trying to bridge the gap between the left and the right. I would say, aside from Marjorie Taylor Greene, the vast majority of the talks were about what the conservative Republican vision is for America. This sort of thing, that kind of thing is going to be seen on both sides, vision for the future sort of ordeal. And I say with the exception of Marjorie Taylor Greene, because out of these key speakers, she was the only one who really went into the stuff that somebody on the left would expect to be hearing from a Republican convention, you know, transing the kids and what is a woman and all of this stuff, things that are important and relevant. But I think that for the average American, that's not their top concern. I think the average American is concerned about the price of gas. I think they're concerned about our southern border. I think that those types of issues rank much higher than these cultural issues for an average regular Joe. And so that's my metric for that. Now we'll get into the DNC speakers, but just immediately one thing that I found to be quite ironic, given the fact that Donald Trump is the lead of the Republican Party right now, is that all of the speeches, for the vast majority of them, they were attacking Democratic policies, the economy, the border, being lax on crime, this sort of thing. And it was the Democrat speakers who were attacking Trump with a capital T. He's old, he's billionaire, all of this stuff. They didn't attack the policies themselves. I didn't really hear any of them attacking policy. It was all just attacking Trump as a person, which, you know, is fine. He does that as well. But it's just funny that this one time that I'm actually comparing the right to the left, that's the way that it shook out in this case. And I'm not saying that it's not the norm for Democrats to attack character. That is the norm. All I'm saying is that it's typically the norm for the Republicans too. So it's just funny that this one time They actually addressed policy. Another thing that I found to be quite funny was that in Obama's speech, he acknowledged the fact that a key portion of the Republican platform right now is the corruption of our government. Now, of course, Obama made that out to seem completely crazy and untrue because he's deeply part of that corruption. But that brings me nicely to another point that I want to make. So later we're going to talk about roll call who did attend these events, but I've seen a lot of people talking about who didn't attend these events. Because there were a lot of very key Republican figures who did not attend the RNC. Because the DNC had their stars. They had the Obamas, they had the Clintons. They rolled out the red carpet for their political favorites. And the same was not seen at the RNC. You didn't see a Bush, you didn't see a Romney, a Cheney, none of these figures. And this is how I interpret that. It is correct that there were not the key Republican political figures at the RNC. But to me, the way that I have started to view politics is I don't see there to be a huge difference between Romney and a Clinton. They're both establishment figures. And that is essentially what the Republican Party has started to attempt to distance itself from, at least with Trump, at least with that the direction that it's heading with Trump. I think that that's at least in part what is trying to be accomplished. Now, are they doing the best job of that? No. But I think that it is working to some degree because the Romneys and the Cheneys don't want anything to do with it. So that tells me we're at least heading in the right direction. And by no means do I think that Trump is perfect on this issue. I definitely think, especially in his first term, he listened far too much to the Faucis and any other advisors that are pushing in that direction. And while he might not be the opposite of the coin to a Harris Walls, he's definitely not on the same side. And that's as good as it's going to get at this current point in time. But that's the way that I interpret not seeing the key Republican figures, because a lot of people on the left, they look at these huge figures not showing up as a negative and a bad thing, because I think we both agree that they didn't show up because they don't like the direction that the party is headed. We just disagree on whether or not that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we are distancing ourselves from the establishment. But interpret that how you will. I think next week we might talk a little bit more in depth about the establishment and what I personally believe that to be. So stick around, make sure you subscribe. And as for the overall message of the DNC, I don't think it was that far off from the RNC. There was a lot of talk about hope for the future. There was a lot of talk about the people, the American people, because that's Harris's campaign slogan, is for the people. Now, of course, I'm incredibly biased and I find that to be a load of shit, but that was their message. Okay, so moving on to the next category, the overall vibe. I think the RNC, they had two completely different vibes, because you have to remember the RNC was coming off just days from the attempted assassination on Trump. And I think because of that, there was an overall vibe of gratitude. I wasn't there in person, but just watching the speeches, watching Trump walk out for that first time, it was palpable. I could feel it. And I think a lot of people also felt it. And there's also perseverance and endurance, a lot of these kind of emotions and feelings. It was unlike any other political convention that I've ever watched or seen. As I mentioned, that moment when Trump first walked out, he looked different. He felt different. There was a certain softness to him, a certain humility. And I do not think that I'm alone in feeling that way. If you saw that video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He just seemed so un-Trump. And what's funny to me is, even though the attempted assassination was only 2 months ago, I don't think one person at the DNC spoke about it, which is kind of ironic, because they spoke a lot about uniting the country and bringing everyone together, and yet they're not going to talk about this thing that shook the country to its core. A lot of people were scared. A lot of people who don't even support Trump were scared. That's a scary thing to watch your former president, the leading presidential candidate, almost get his brains blown out. That's a terrifying thing. And it was not addressed one time. And that's truly shocking. Instead, The inverse happened, actually. They went right back, and they've been back at this for a while now, but they really drilled it in this night of he's going to strip away your rights. He's going to become a dictator. He's never going to give up power. He's going to step all over the American people. All of the type of rhetoric that kind of got us to that point to begin with. I don't know. It's just a little bit ironic to me. But that's politics. I mean, God, you're going to see it on the right too. You just would wish that in a moment where the rubber has hit the road, and it has, that you would see better. But if you're expecting better out of a politician, then you're going to be let down every single time. But moving on to the vibe of the DNC, it very stark contrast. The DNC was just a party. I saw this video. I'm not going to play it because it's definitely not family friendly. Not that this is necessarily a family friendly show. But it was there was this guy and this girl, and they're talking about all of the naughty behaviors that are going on behind the scenes at the DNC. And I'm sure that stuff is happening at the RNC too, but God, to be so blatant about it, please. It's like the abortion bus all over again. Now, to me personally, I'm just not sure if the party vibe is the right vibe for a political convention. It's kind of cringy. And I'm not at all saying that just about the DNC, because I have forever etched into my brain Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt on stage. And that was an unfortunate thing that I wish I could unsee, and I wish hadn't had to have happen. But the DNC certainly leaned into the party vibes far more. Coming back again to the fact that the RNC happened just a few days after the assassination attempt, there was also a heightened sense of patriotism. And hear me out, this is kind of going to be a side tangent, but I promise you it will make sense. It has been often said at this point that the Harris Walls campaign is one of vibes. They are doing the TikTok trends. She's having a brat summer. All of these things that are really resonating with Gen Z because they live their lives online and make every decision based off of how the person makes them feel. And if Kamala Harris is giving good vibes, then that's all a Gen Zer needs to know. I say as a Gen Z person myself. But one thing that has been hugely trending this summer is country music, cowboy boots, going out in a truck in the mud. Twisters was one of the biggest hits this summer, which was fantastic, by the way, if you have not seen it. This is coming from someone who is a huge fan of the original Twister. Twisters was amazing. I've seen it twice. Anyways, and I think that, yes, this is a trend, but I also think that it's a unique trend because patriotism, the American flag, this is something that's going to strike a chord of nostalgia in every single American. Even if you grew up in this city, there is something about seeing somebody in a truck in the mud waving an American flag that still strikes that chord of like, this is America. You know what I mean? And I just think that that speaks to most people. And now I say all of that to say that along with the club vibes, the DNC also had American flags waving and USA chants and all of this kind of stuff, which seems very bizarre coming from the party that is filled with people who hate America. I've said it multiple times, but the Democrat Party has become overrun by the far left, and the far left does not like America at all. We are systematically and indefinitely racist. We have systems of oppression. We are built off of a patriarchy. We live on stolen land. We are nothing but colonizers and brutalizers and all of these horrible, awful things that embody America. And so to see that party waving an American flag was shocking. Now, I'm not necessarily upset about that. I think that we are Americans, and when we can't unite around ideas, we can reunite around the fact that we are all Americans, and that should be the thing that we have in common. And that's part of the problem currently, is that half of our population hates this country, and so we don't have anything to unite over. So I do think that it is a good thing that maybe there is some patriotism being injected back into the Democratic Party. It was just shocking. It was just disturbing to see a little bit. Not disturbing, just shocking. But I will digress on that point. Now, to get to the last category, we have roll call. As Meghan McCain put it, I'm sorry, but the DNC 2024 roll call with DJ Cassidy, themed state music, and party club atmosphere is blowing the RNC's roll call out of the water. It looks like a giant party and celebration, and everyone in that room looks like they're having a blast. And she isn't wrong. She's just misplaced. Let me explain. Yes, the DNC definitely had the superior roll call. They definitely had party vibes. Definitely had some A-list celebrities. They had Pink, Kerry Washington, Lil Jon, and the Republican Party simply cannot compete in celebrity culture, because to become a Republican in Hollywood is to not be in Hollywood. The best that the RNC did was Jason Aldean, and that was definitely just a gimme. Because other than that, we had Hulk Hogan. I still don't know. I did not learn that after last episode. We had him taking off his shirt, and we had Kid Rock. Kid Rock's cool, I guess, but he's not like huge in pop culture, let's just say. And if we're being honest, it just isn't the same. Now, all of that said, I equally dislike the fact that the DNC had Pink or whoever it might be as much as I do that the RNC had Kid Rock or whoever it might be, because this is a political convention. Now, sure, it's okay to maybe break up all of the speeches with performance, this, that, the other, but it felt like they were trying to make it more than that. They were trying to make the performance the whole thing, and I just don't know that that's what a serious society does. And I also understand maybe they're trying to appeal to a younger generation. I don't know, first, for me, it fell flat. It personally fell flat for me. On both sides, because forgive me if it feels strange to be discussing the future of our nation one second, and then the next second, Lil Jon is coming down the stairs performing Get Low. These two things I don't think should be happening together. But the reality is, when I saw Meghan McCain's tweet about how much better the RNC roll call was, the only thing I could truly think is, who gives a fuck? As I said earlier, she's correct. They did have better celebrities in the house. Congratulations. Who cares? When the businesses outside of the DNC have to board up their windows in preparation for riots, who cares what celebrities are in attendance? It's giving me the same vibes as the Met Gala, watching all of these people parade in their expensive dresses and all of this stuff. There were box seats at the DNC and the RNC that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, the businesses outside are boarding up their windows. Not outside of the RNC. The police chief and I believe the mayor for the RNC spoke about how they increased security and police presence, because naturally, if you're having any large event, you're going to do that, especially though if you're having a political event where there's dozens of powerful, important people going to be in the building. Of course, you're going to increase police presence and security. But what's different is that Mayor Brandon Johnson said that he has said in a press conference that he has been working with public safety agencies for months to prepare for protests outside of the DNC. That's not normal. It isn't. That's not normal. Like, does that not strike anyone else as being completely bizarre that the mayor of a city is prepping for months in order to protect businesses because there's a political convention coming to town and it's only one side of the political aisle? This did not happen for the RNC because that party has become so overrun by their extremist wing that they have to board up businesses when they come to town, because that extremist part is going to burn them down when they don't get their way. Personally, I am far more concerned about that than I am if Pink attended the DNC. Maybe that's just me. But okay, to wrap this up, we had the categories of message, vibe, and roll call. The DNC certainly partied harder, so they are going to get the roll call point. I think the RNC had better speakers with better points. Obviously, I'm biased, but it's my video, so the RNC gets the point for message. And because of the palpable sense of gratitude, humility, and patriotism that was going on, the RNC also gets the point for vibe, because that's more my vibe than a club. Sue me. And surprise bonus round, the RNC gets an additional point for not having a free abortion bus in the parking lot. So that shakes out to be whatever that shakes out to be. I don't really know how much this actually mattered, but it was the journey that we went on today. So thank you so much for sticking around and hanging out for it. we are officially in the final countdown to the election. So make sure that you are all registered to vote. Make sure that you are going to go vote that day, because we cannot get comfortable, even though we've gotten some really good endorsements recently. I don't want that to give us like a false sense of security. Everyone needs to go out and vote, and let's get our country back on track. All right, guys, I will talk to you next week. Bye.